How to see me, just a cage of bones. There's nothing inside. Will it always be burning down the walls? Is there a way for me to break? I'm a sharpshooter at Paul's masquerade. I am both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, have no face to show. Please don't take off my mask, my disguise.
Visa, MasterCard, and American Express are to start categorizing gun shop sales as problematic. So, well, I mean, you knew they were all going to do that. But, yeah, we'll be talking about that. Then, again, I've been called a fascist while stuff like this is going on, coming from our friends from the left. But we'll be talking about that. In other news, CBS actually comes out and says the quiet part out loud, that taxation is, among other things, used to reduce the wealth from the people that are being taxed, while they inadvertently talk about the transfer of wealth from Elizabeth to Charles. So we'll be talking just a bit about that. Plus, a carryover from Friday, I did find a video of the interview with Sharon Osbourne and Tucker, so we'll look at that and see what she had to say. In other news, a woman is beheaded in the Bay Area. She has been identified, so has her killer. And surprise, surprise, the killer is an immigrant on an expired visa. So we'll be talking just a bit about what that means and where we go from here. And Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez says she wasn't sure if she wanted to marry her boyfriend because he's white. Yes, we're actually there. It is going to be all of this and more. Welcome back to the backup channel. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So the Donald is in D.C. right now. It's trending on Twitter right now because they again don't want people to go talk about the fascist with a blue tie that stopped just short of calling for the extermination of all his political enemies. And oh man, does that get under the skin of leftoids when you point that out too, by the way. Oh man, you've never seen these people that insulted before. Then when you go in and say, oh yeah, by the way, the deity that you worship, the current president of the United States, stopped just short of calling for the extermination of all of us. So maybe we should be paying attention to that, not somebody who has literally zero power in DC unless you give it to him. Which, by the way, they are doing when they make a trend like this. I don't know why he's in D.C. I don't care why he's in D.C. Until he goes off and shoots somebody on Pennsylvania Avenue and gets away with it. A private citizen being in Washington, D.C. is really none of my concern. Especially when we have a sitting president who stopped just short of calling for the extermination of all of his political enemies. But we won't be talking about that because I'm skipping over that. Hey, we might not even get to the Mar-a-Lago thing right now because that's all the way down at the bottom of the stack. And once again, given the fact that we're in midterm season, given the failings of the current administration and the Congress that he has behind him and everything else that he has failing for him, I don't really want to talk about him. I would rather talk about... Well, let me rephrase that. I don't want to talk about Trump. I would rather talk about the current government and the problems that they're having. But, the people who support the current government sure want you to go talk about something else. So, regardless, let's get into it. Let's get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Mr. Behavior, PJ Patriot, Tweets by Brit, KTZed. Go check out... Who am I missing? There's a series. Oh, the No Gimmicks podcast. Go check them out as well. So go check out all that great programming. A lot of people with the same idea, the same dream that I had to bring you news by the common man for the common man. So go check that out. It's going to be an awesome time. It's going to be a great time. And let's get down into the finance before we get into the news. All right, starting with the Dow. The Dow spent the Friday up, and the futures are looking up as well. The Dow sitting and closing on Friday at 32,151.71. And it jumped up, it tried to falter back down, it jumped up again, and it just held steady throughout the day. So it's a little bit of a reprieve, and they're back up above the 32,000 mark for those of you who still have Dow stocks in your 401k. It's still not where it should be, especially given the fact that it hit almost 37,000 at one point throughout the last 52 weeks, but it's better than it was, especially going through last week. Looking in at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is also staging itself a comeback, bringing itself back up to $22,289.90. Once again, 52-week high, not anywhere close to being met. In fact, it's a lot lower than the Dow is right now. It's probably going to be a while before we see $67,000 Bitcoin again, but for $22,289.90, it's not overly shabby either, so we'll continue to watch that and see what happens with that. We'll bring this out to the 5-day and see where on September 9th, that Friday, it took a significant jump, and then it's been just steadily climbing throughout the weekend, so that's what we see coming off of that. And gas. Now, I'm going to go into this with a disclaimer. I understand what's actually happening here. And I think most of you guys do too as well. But gas all across the Madison area is down to $3.19. In fact, I put in for $3.18 in a city that's typically 10 cents higher than what I'm seeing for here. So, gas is a little bit all over the place right now, but regardless, we're seeing the $3.19 all across the Madison area. Now, don't get used to this. There are some things to remember. Number one, the Strategic Oil Reserve draw is going to end next month. Keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, there was the order that went along with the Strategic Oil Reserve draw that said that the oil companies, as soon as the draw is over, will be responsible for putting some or all of the oil back into the strategic reserves, which means, what does that mean? Not large, but a significant portion of the oil that could be used to make gasoline in this country is going to be diverted back into the strategic oil reserves to the tunes of millions of barrels a day. So don't get used to this, especially once it starts getting really, really cold out. Because as we watch this, as we look at this, it's probably going to wind up being worse than it was this past year. I'm bracing for it. I'm diverting a little bit of money into places just in case. I'm also grabbing a bicycle in case I've got to ride a bike to work. It's luckily only 5 miles, but just in case I have to ride a bike to work for a little while because we're seeing $6, $7, $8 a gallon gas. But we'll continue to watch this and see what happens with this. Let's see what IBD has to say from Investors Business Daily. Dow futures rise, market rally faces this risk. Elon Musk's new Twitter move. Warren Buffett buys more OXY stock. That's Occidental Petroleum, by the way. From Ed Carson. Dow futures rose modestly Monday morning, along with the S&P and the Nasdaq, helped by a falling dollar and Treasury yields. Warren Buffett's stock, Occidental Petroleum, Elon Musk's latest move versus Twitter, and 3 top software plays are in focus. The market rally looks to continue momentum this week with the S&P and the Nasdaq back above their 50-day lines, and many leading stocks flashing buy signals. However, the 10-year yield continues to march toward long-term highs, a potential headwind for the market rally. The August Consumer Price Index is due out on Tuesday. Well, we'll see what happens with that, because we'll know what inflation is by next month, or by tomorrow. Warren Buffett has loaded up on more Occidental Petroleum shares, with Berkshire Hathaway disclosing 26.8% Oxy stock stake late Friday. Occidental Petroleum rose late Friday after round-tripping a recent breakout last week. Elon Musk has made a new argument for getting out of a $44 billion Twitter takeover this week. Twitter shareholders will vote on Musk's offer. Twitter stock fell slightly late Friday after big gains brought us back up to the top of the article with an advertisement. Let's see. After big gains during the holiday shortened week, Tesla stock jumped back above key levels and arguably offering an aggressive entry. The Biden admin in October tends to widen curbs on semiconductor shipments to China related to artificial intelligence and chip-making tools, right after Nancy Pelosi sold off all of her chip-making stocks. Reuters reported Sunday night, citing several sources, that will codify bans on certain NVIDIA and AMD chips. Both companies late last month confirmed getting Commerce Department letters barring those shipments. Meanwhile, Cadence Design Systems, Palo Alto Networks, and Paylocity are 3 software stocks showing strength, setting up, or flashing buy signals. Palo Alto is on the IBD leaderboard, while Paylocity is on the IBD leaderboard watch list. Cadence Design Systems is an IBD long-term leader. Tesla is on the IBD 50. Cadence Design Systems and Occidental Petroleum are on the IBD Big Cap 20. On the futures, Dow futures rose 0.4% versus fair value. The S&P rose 0.6% and the Nasdaq climbed 0.7%. Even a small gain on Monday will lift the Dow above the 50-day and 21-day moving averages. The Nasdaq finished Friday just 1 point below its 21-day line. European Central Bank officials continue to signal further aggressive rate hikes following the last week's 75-point ECB drive. The euro is rallying the dollar, providing a lift to gold, Bitcoin, and to Dow futures. The 10-year yield fell 4 points to 3.28% without any GDP to back it up. Crude oil futures rose a fraction. U.S. natural gas prices turned slightly lower. European natural gas prices were falling again. That may be the best news for Europe that we've heard all summer, by the way. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So we have that. I've got one more on finance, looking in at the housing market from Yahoo Finance. Should I sell my house before prices really crash or wait for the next big real estate boom? I'm going to see what they have to say. I have not pre-read this article, But after I see what it is that they have to say, I am going to offer and weigh in on what I think is going to be the best course of action for most people here. Alright, but looking in at what Chris Clark has to say, home sellers may face closing window on today's still warm but cooling real estate market. While sellers can still take advantage of low inventory, they should also know that inflation, rising interest rates, and perceptions about overvalued homes may be taking some air out of the seller's market. There are also signs that homes are slowly but steadily staying on the market longer, creating a hard choice for would-be sellers. Do you bet that your local market remains enough in demand and lures over-asking price offers, or do you hold tight and wait for the next big wave up? Mitt Romney says a billionaire tax will... No, these are other articles. Don't miss, never mind. Elected leaders often quip about politics. All politics are local. That's true for real estate too. In-demand cities and neighborhoods will always defy broad national trends. Things like quality schools, livability, and access to cultural amenities will also always help home sellers get top dollar. Yeah, but where's their quality school at this point? But recent numbers are hard to ignore. Redfin's Home Buyer Demand Index gauges home tour requests and other home buying services from Redfin agents rose 7 points during last week of July, with mortgage purchase applications ticking up for the first time in over a month. But Redfin also said the improvements so far aren't leading to sales. The organization said pending sales fell in July and new listings fell 11%, the largest drop since June of 2020. More pessimistic numbers were offered recently by Fannie Mae, whose home purchase sentiment index dropped to its lowest level since 2011. Fannie Mae said customers who are pessimistic about home buying conditions and that the percentage of consumers who believe it's a good time to sell also fell. Though many leading indicators might suggest we're entering a cool-off, a handful of critical factors make now a good time to sell, assuming that you're ready to list. Homes may be on the market for longer, but demand remains relatively high, and housing inventory remains low compared to previous years. Some parts of the U.S. remain in a bidding war territory. Utah, Washington, and Florida continue to see 20% plus appreciation, where sellers can expect offers above the asking price. All cash. If you live in a low inventory market and buyers outnumber properties, sellers can expect to cash in, sometimes literally. The all cash offer market is hot right now, which is great news for sellers because cash offers typically speed up the path towards closing. Rising rates. Though the Federal Reserve's moves to raise interest rates can work against sellers, higher rates mean bigger monthly mortgages. Looming hikes will likely prompt some buyers to lock in low rates before the Fed's next expected move. The average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage is now around 5.35%, significantly higher than a year ago when rates hovered at just above 3%. Yahoo Finance finishes out and says, a good time to wait. There are good reasons to sell, but just as many to hold tight. Your own plan. What happens if your home sells quickly? Do you have a plan for the proceeds from the sale? Do you need to begin the hunt for a new space? Your new mortgage. If you're selling because you need a bigger home, that leap up may be unworkable, especially if you're looking in a popular city or neighborhood or city. A new, bigger property can swallow the profit that the just sold property and still carry your bigger monthly mortgage payment, plus your interest is going to be higher, and yes, the rising rates again. Here's my outlook on the market, and this is going to be an individualized thing. You need to look personally at your finances and where you are at in today's market, because if you lose your house, if it gets foreclosed on because the rising inflation made it so that your dollar is worth 9, 8, 10, 17% less than it was the last time you got a raise, in some of our cases. If that's the case that you're sitting at, then it's going that monthly house payment is going to stay the same, but it's going to eat up a bigger percentage of your expendable income throughout the month. So the first thing to look at is look at your own finances. Look and see where you are at, and if you need that cash right now or not. With homes just sitting on the market, you're sitting in a situation where you could possibly downsize and still maybe make it out on top, especially if you have to go sell your house in a hurry. With that being said, if you are not in dire straits at all, I would not even bother listing a home. And this is coming from somebody who wants to go into real estate, who wants to have inventory on the market so I can go back and turn a commission off of it. Right now, I would look at this and say I would not even consider selling a home unless you are an absolute necessity of it. And by the way, that's going to start coming in the very near future, especially if the inflation keeps going the way that it is and gas keeps up above the $3 mark. We're going to continue to watch and see home prices stagnate, but people still being in the dire strait where they need to sell. Being in the absolute sell or lose everything position. So that's one thing to watch for off of this, but right now, go address your finances, see what it is, and unfortunately, and I know that it sucks, and my big advocation is to try to get as many people out of the rental market as possible. For some of you who are in the dire straits, it might be advantageous for you to take the cash, sell the home, take the cash, and go rent a place for a year while we wait to see what happens with this. And this is not me trying to come back out and trying to manipulate the markets one way or another. This is me just coming out and giving sage advice to people who may go to try to do one thing and put themselves in a worse situation because of it. But at 5.35% interest on most of your average home loans, no, I wouldn't go anywhere near listing and trying to get myself into another home right now, unless you are an absolute necessity. That fun move, you probably shouldn't be doing. But that's what we see for that. All right, and with that, let's get into the main news of the day. And we're going to start with a reminder. Now, I stopped doing NFL myself personally because with them, hashtag end racism, BLM on the helmets, the names of people who were rapists, murderers, etc. on the helmets because they just happened to die in a matter of police brutality. The fact that I have said on numerous occasions, I don't mind a little bit of political messaging here and there, but not on my off time. I'm a political analyst. When I want to go turn my brain off, I want it to be free from the politics of DC, especially the politics of people who hate me. I have not turned on an NFL football game since Jacob Blake was shot, just so you know. I have not sat and watched an NFL football game since then. But it is still important that we talk about what happens at the NFL games, especially when people do something that is less than intelligent. From 7 News Miami. 11 vehicles scorched after fire sparks in Hard Rock Stadium parking lot during Dolphins game. No reported injuries. No reported injuries, but 11 people lost their second biggest asset, or in some cases their biggest asset. From Danielle Garcia. A fire that broke out in a parking lot at Hard Rock Stadium during the Miami Dolphins game consumed nearly a dozen vehicles, and investigators believe a tailgate party preceding the event may have played a role. Sunday afternoon's blaze in a remote parking lot of the venue ignited shortly after kickoff. 7 News cameras rolled as flames engulfed several cars. Fortunately, the fire sparked once most people were already inside for the game against the New England Patriots. There were no injuries reported. Huge plumes of black smoke were visible from inside the stadium and from the highway. A Dolphins fan who identified himself as Jordan described the moment he realized there were cars on fire. We're standing here, we're all having a great time, and we see a big black smoke over there, he says. We're like, oh, what's going on? We start looking and, oh, it's a fire. Next thing we know, we hear a few pops, it's the tires going off. Police officers who responded to the Miami Gardens venue said someone left a barbecue pit under their car when they went in for a game. Well, somebody forgot to put out the charcoals, a man is heard saying in a cell phone video. After the game, fans walked by to see the wreckage, hoping their cars were safe. Unfortunately, 11 vehicles caught on fire. It took firefighters 32 minutes to douse the flames. Many owners had no idea about the fire until they walked out to see the charred remains. Daniel Laduz said his car was right next to the fire but was spared. We literally just walked up from after the game. We saw the emergency medical services, obviously the charred up cars, he said. Patriots fan Colin Bossio was also fortunate. We're lucky with the car for sure, he said. When asked about, that's weird. I just got an out of memory message for YouTube, which means I probably have way too many tabs open. That's weird. Usually I get that on the Blaze. When asked about the final score, giving the Dolphins a 20-7 victory over his team, Bossio replied, "Not as lucky, but it's all right. It's only week 1. The fire has been ruled accidental." So, yeah, if you're gonna go tailgate, put your grill out. Take the bottle of water or the can of whatever cheap beer that you have out there and pour it over those coals, because otherwise, that. But I do have to say that it is fortunate that it was only 11 vehicles. Because that honestly could have been a lot worse. That could have been a lot worse. I've never been to Hard Rock Stadium, but I've been to Lambeau Field, and trust me when I say, up by the stadium, and then on the lawns all around the stadium, they're packed in there like sardines. So that could have gone very, very badly in a very big hurry, but hey, nobody was hurt. And compared to the number of vehicles that are typically in a stadium like that, also a lot of people were spared. All right, let's read from the Daily Wire because of what yesterday was. And honestly, one of the things that I can say here, it's been 21 years, I did not make a single reference to the 9/11 attack yesterday. It's contentious, but it has also been 21 years. I mourn for the people who had to lose their lives, but really at some point, we've got to start coming together and putting ourselves back into the state of unity that we were in right after 9/11 happened. But what we see here from the Daily Wire, Dem Senator uses 9/11 anniversary to bring up January 6th. From John Rigolizzo. On the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on America, Senator Mark Warner invoked the January 6th Capitol Selfie Fest. Appearing on Face the Nation on Sunday, Warner compared the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, in which nearly 3,000 Americans died at the Capitol Selfie Fest, January 6, 2021. He said the nation needs to recapture the unity of spirit felt on 9/11 to counter election deniers and January 6th. Oh, so once again, we're going with the boxcars. Let's listen to what Warner had to say.
9/11 introduced to many Americans for the very first time this sense of vulnerability at home, and it launched the global war on terror. I wonder how vulnerable you think America is now. Are we paying enough attention to the Middle East and to Afghanistan?
Well, Margaret, I remember, as most Americans do, where they were on 9/11. I was in the middle of a political campaign, and suddenly the differences with my opponent seemed very small in comparison. And our country came together. And in many ways, we defeated the terrorists because of the resilience of the American public, because of our intelligence community. And we are safer, better prepared. The stunning thing to me is here we are 20 years later, and the attack on the symbol of our democracy was not coming from terrorists, but it came from literally insurgents attacking the Capitol on January 6th. So I believe we are stronger. I believe our intelligence community has performed remarkably. I think the threat of terror has diminished. I think we still have new challenges in terms of state challenges, Russia, and longer term, a technology competition with China. But I do worry about some of the activity in this country where the election deniers, the insurgency that took place on January 6th, that is something I hope we could see that same kind of unity of spirit
Well, I guess that was kind of disgusting. But realistically, and I mean, we talk about this, and I talked about it at the top of the show. At the very beginning, when I talked about the fact that they need to talk about Trump being in D.C. because otherwise they'll have to go back and talk about sky-high inflation, high gas prices, and the fact that the leader of the free world called for the extermination of his political enemies on a stage to thunderous applause. I mean, this is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause. They need this. But this is not something where we were all together. This is a part of the divide, the fact that this happened like this. But you knew this was coming as well. Let's be realistic here. Let's be completely realistic. And note the fact that from the moment that January 6th happened, whether it be by the FBI, whether it actually be by adult Trump supporters, whether it actually be by the president, former president himself, or the current one for that matter, the first thing that they said was 9/11. They needed that. And they're going to continue to use that and milk it for everything that it's worth. So that's what we see for that. All right, title story from the Associated Press. Visa, MasterCard, American Express to start categorizing gun shop sales. That's right. You want to go out and buy that armament? That ammunition? Well, it's going to show up and you're going to get flagged for it. This, by the way, and I don't say this lightly because I do urge people not to go and shop at Walmart for anything, especially ammunition, but not to shop at Walmart for anything. This actually might be one of the better arguments to go buy your ammunition at Walmart. Because you can bury that in there with your 27-scented candles, your groceries, those tacky shirts that you thought that you need when you saw them on there, and then you realized you got home and said, wow, this is actually kind of sucky and it's falling apart right away. Or your coffee pot, or a host and slew of other things that you have to go and buy at Walmart. And again, I don't say that lightly because, you know, kind of against that whole going to Walmart thing. From Ken Sweet. Payment processor Visa Incorporated said Saturday that it plans to start separately categorizing sales at gun shops, a major win for gun control advocates who say it will help better track suspicious surges of gun sales that could be a prelude to a mass shootings. What? Okay, the surge in gun sales doesn't happen until after the honk honk mass shooting. Because that's when the pretty politicians over in DC start talking about gun confiscation, but still don't have a way to go back and grandfather everything in. And then people try to get their last minute firearms so they get grandfathered in. But the decision by Visa, the world's largest payment processor, will likely provoke the ire of gun rights advocates and gun lobbyists who've argued that categorizing gun sales would unfairly flag an industry when most sales do not lead to mass shootings. It joins MasterCard and American Express, which also said they plan to move forward with categorizing gun shop sales. Visa said it would adopt the International Organization for Standardization's new merchant code for gun sales, which was announced on Friday. Until Friday, gun store sales were considered general merchandise. Well, up until Friday, that's kind of based. But after Friday, no more. Following ISO's decision to establish a new merchant category code, Visa will proceed with the next steps while ensuring we protect all legal commerce on the Visa network in accordance with our long-standing rules, the payment processor said in a statement. So, here's a question. Because so many people right now are trying to throw the F word around. No, not that F word. On Twitter. So many people are trying to say fascism right now. What is it? What do you call it when the government gets the private industry to go back and violate your rights in a way that the government themselves can't? What is it that you call that? I wonder. Visa's adoption is significant as the largest payment network, with MasterCard and Amex will likely put pressure on the banks as the card issuers to adopt the standard as well. Visa acts as a middleman between merchants and banks, and it will be up to the banks to decide whether they will allow sales at gun stores to happen on their issued cards. Are you serious? Are you serious? And here's a better question. Are you stupid? Because that is going to, especially if you've got a bank in a rural area, like, okay, kind of a slight self-dox here just because of where I am. But, I mean, again, you guys all know that I'm around the Janesville area, so this is not a huge dox. Given the fact that, with the exception of Janesville, which even that in and of itself isn't all that urban, given my proximity to Janesville and the proximity of all the rural areas around Janesville, I mean, Blackhawk Credit Union is not going to be the one going out there saying, yeah, no, we don't want to... We don't want you going to that gun store and using our bank-issued card for that. Blackhawk isn't going to do that. But the Chase Bank down the road might. Gun control advocates had gained significant wins on this front in recent weeks. New York City officials and pension funds had pressured the ISO and banks to adopt this new code. Two of the country's largest public pension funds in California and New York have been pressing the country's largest credit card firms to establish sales codes, specifically for firearm-related sales that could flag suspicious purchases or more easily trace how guns and ammunition are sold. Excuse me. Merchant category codes now exist for almost every kind of purchase, including those made at supermarkets, clothing stores, coffee shops, and many other retailers. When you buy an airline ticket or pay for your groceries, your credit card company has a special code for those retailers. It's just common sense that we have the same policies in place for gun and ammunition stores, said Eric Adams, a former police captain. Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people who were not down on the progressive left are certainly having some buyer's remorse about Eric Adams at this point. A former police captain who blames the proliferation of guns for his city's deadly violence. And, you know, not the fact that you lock people in their homes for 2 years and you've told police not to go back and enforce crime because it's somehow racist. The city's comptroller, Brad Lander, said it made moral and financial sense as a tool to push back against gun violence. Unfortunately, the credit card companies have failed to support this simple, practical, potentially life-saving tool. The time has come for them to do so, Lander said recently, before Visa and others had adopted the move. And by the way, for all you people who think Bitcoin is going to be your answer for this, do keep in mind that once you get out and have a way to go pay with your Bitcoin at the gun shop, which I'm sure that a lot of them are going to go find a way to go start doing, but once you have found a way to go and pay for things with Bitcoin, that transaction is also going to be on several different ledgers, because that's how the blockchain works. Landers is a trustee at the New York City's Employees Retirement System, Teachers Retirement System, and Board of Education Retirement System, which together own 667,200 shares. And American Express, valued at approximately $92.49 million, 1.1 million shares in MasterCard, valued at approximately $347.59 million, and 1.85 million shares of Visa, valued at approximately $363.86 million. The pension funds and gun control advocates arguing that the creating a merchant category code for standalone firearm and ammunition stores could aid in the battle against gun violence a week before the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, where 49 people died after a shooter opened fire in 2016. The assailant used credit cards to buy more than $26,000 worth of guns and ammunition, including purchases at a standalone gun retailer. Whose credit card? I wonder. Gun rights advocates argue that tracking sales at gun stores would unfairly target legal gun purchases, since merchant codes just track the type of merchant where a credit or debit card is used, not the actual items purchased. A sale of a gun safe worth thousands of dollars and an item considered part of responsible gun ownership could be seen as just a large purchase at a gun shop. Yes, that's true as well. This is, and by the way, there are several laws and regulations in place to keep the United States from having a gun registry, as done by the government. Guess what this does? If now Visa and MasterCard can go back, and by the way, with that being said, I mean, if you were using your credit or debit card at the gun store, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Looking back on hindsight, and hindsight is 2020, I shouldn't have been doing that either, and I have been doing that. I bought clays and shells over at a sportsman club with some friends, and covered for one of the people there because he hadn't brought any cash or anything on with him, or he had to duck out early, was actually what had happened with that. But with that having been said, no, from this point on, if I go out there, I'm going over to the ATM and bringing a bunch of cash with me. And where does it go after that? I mean, use the bank card to go buy a meal at the Trump rally. Oh, are you on a domestic terrorist list now? It might be time to start looking into just changing everything over to cash and stop using these cards. I'm sure the banks would love that. Yeah, Fanning, I mentioned that at the top of the topic here. I wonder if they'll code a whole store's purchases as gun if it just has a firearms department. Walmart. Dick's Sporting Goods. Well, Dick's Sporting Goods doesn't have a firearm department anymore because they cucked. But that would be another good one where the vast majority of the people go into the store to buy a jersey, to buy a basketball, or a pair of gym shorts, or a jockstrap. But they just happen to have that department in there where they have armaments. I wonder if this would lead places like Walmart, and again, I know that they don't do it anymore, but to use them as an example, or like a Dick's Sporting Goods. I wonder if this would lead them to eliminate more of them to eliminate their firearms departments, to push them out to a place where it would be easily categorized. That'd be an interesting way to go, or like Farm and Fleet or something. Which I don't know if Farm and Fleet has firearm, because I've never bought a firearm at Farm and Fleet, but I know they have ammo. I wonder if that would push them to eliminate their ammunition department. This is scary times, and yeah, Helton got it right off the bat too. Corporate fascism. Using the private industry, which is at this point intertwined with the government, to do things the government can't, to make a registry, to flag things as suspicious, to try to prevent people from exercising their right to self-defense. We'll continue to watch this, monitor this, and see where this goes. The new hero of the West, from the Hill, Zelensky to headline U.S. Defense Industry Conference. Yeah, you had to see this one coming. From Jordan Williams. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will address the U.S. defense contractors later this month. Thank you for all your money. I give you back all of it except for fee for laundering. He headlines the annual Future Force Capabilities Conference, an exhibition hosted by the National Defense Industrial Association, otherwise known as the Military Industrial Complex. Zelensky is scheduled to speak at the event on September 21st, according to the program, for the event available on the NDIA's website. Oleksiy Reznikov, Ukraine's Minister of Defense, is also scheduled to speak that day. News of the appearance was first reported by Reuters, which noted that the officials will speak via video link. Zelensky is expected to appeal for more weapons for his country during his speech, and probably more money because why the hell wouldn't he? The outlet added. News of the Ukrainian president's speech and to the military-industrial complex, whose membership includes defense industry giants like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and General Dynamics, comes as Kiev looks to fend off Russia's invasion as it drags through its 6th month. We're having the list again. I'm looking at this list here again. Am I reading this paragraph twice? Did I do something stupid? No. It's a different paragraph. It just happens to have the same listings on it. 8 defense contractors, including Raytheon, Lockheed, and General Dynamics, attended a meeting at the Pentagon in April to discuss how the U.S. could speed up production to help U.S. fend off Moscow's war. No, that's not what they discussed. That's what the general public wants to know that they discussed, but what they actually discussed is, okay, hey, you guys in the government, how about you cut us another big check? No big contract, so we're going to mark everything up 100%. Why don't you cut us another big check? And we'll go send more of that over to the Ukraine. And it just might happen to find its way into the hands of the rebels that you're trying to arm in other countries to destabilize another system. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. Hey, after this, it's totally not a campaign contribution if I buy you a bottle of Dom, right? So let's go make me a buttload of money and I will buy you a bottle of Dom, and hey, there just might happen to be $1,000 stuck into it that you're not going to be able to trace. The U.S. is committed $15.2 billion of your money in security assistance to Ukraine since the beginning of the Biden admin, including $14.5 billion since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th. On Thursday, the U.S. unveiled yet another $675 million weapons package to Ukraine, including additional high-mobility artillery rocket system, additional high-speed anti-radiation missiles, and more than 5,000 anti-armor systems, among other equipment. And that is again on your dime. Enjoy! I know you do. What else do we have here? Let's talk from CBS for a little bit, and then, again, as promised, I have the Sharon Osbourne Tucker interview. Let's scroll all the way up to the top. But there is a certain point in the middle of this article that I wanted to focus on. 5 things to know about Queen Elizabeth's wealth and King Charles III's inheritance. From Amy Peachy. The passing of Queen Elizabeth II involves not only the transfer of the crown to her first son, Charles, now officially King Charles III, but also a shift of her personal wealth and the ownership and trust of a massive portfolio of assets that range from iconic castles to the crown jewels. Queen Elizabeth II's 70-year reign spanned a period of huge wealth creation across the globe when new businesses sprang up in the decades after World War II. But much of her wealth is tied up in tangible assets that haven't exactly appreciated, like the stocks of Microsoft or Amazon, which have soared 240,000% and 146,000% respectively since their IPOs. That may be why Queen Elizabeth's personal fortune appears relatively modest compared to that of tech moguls like Bill Gates, who is worth an estimated $115 billion, or former Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, worth $153 billion. Yet Elizabeth's historic reign helped cement the British monarchy's brand, which in 2017 was valued at $78 billion, according to an estimate from consultancy Brand Finance. That includes tangible assets such as Buckingham Palace, as well as the monarchy's intangible value of its brand, which boosts tourism to Britain, and sales of products that carry a royal warrant or coat of arms, the group said. Queen Elizabeth's personal net worth is about $500 billion. The Queen's personal fortune stems from her ownership of art, jewels, investments, and real estate, which includes Balmoral Castle in Scotland, where she passed away on Thursday, and Sandringham House in England. Together, those assets are worth $500 million, Forbes estimates. Most of her personal estate will be inherited by King Charles, according to the Forbes. But this is the important part. This is the part right here. This is the part where they say the quiet part out loud. No inheritance tax for the king. Death and taxes are said to be inescapable, but the UK's monarch is exempt from, by law from one major tax aimed at the wealthy upon inheritance: the estate tax. The nation's sovereign is off the hook for inheritance taxes, according to The Economist. To that end, Charles won't face the UK's 40% inheritance tax, which otherwise would have eaten up about $200 million of his mother's estate. So, 2/5 of the estate, 40%. And what happens when you go back and tax that amount over and over again? You take wealth away from the people. I mean, at least CBS is saying the quiet part out loud. Hey, the purpose of some of this is to go back and pull some of the wealth away from some of these people. But also, and I mean, this actually is one that I've always been curious about. And my big question is why is it that I've always questioned it about the presidency and the Senate and the House, is why it is that they pay taxes. That seems like circular logic. They're putting their taxes into the system, which is going to basically turn around and pay them back out of it. I mean, I'm glad they pay taxes. I just don't understand the circular logic behind it. But it's the same thing with the inheritance tax for the king. I mean, who's going to be the beneficiary of the tax? It makes sense why there is no inheritance tax for this, because oh bother. Well, I'm going to go in here and pay in 40% of my taxes, which is going to come back to the government, which I control. It's going to come back to me. Alright, let's listen to this, because I did tease this out on Friday. I promised this out. So let's have a listen to what Sharon Osbourne had to say to Tucker.
Sharon Osbourne, also from Great Britain, wrote this tribute to the Queen today, quote, "Rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth II, the embodiment of strength, dignity, and unwavering commitment to her vow. May you be at peace beside His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Long live the King." Sharon Osbourne is joining Fox soon, by the way, as a host at Fox Nation, and we are happy to have her tonight. Sharon, thanks so much for coming on. What a sweet and heartfelt series of lines that was. That reflects how you feel, obviously.
Absolutely, it does. I mean, I had the honor to meet the Queen many times. Look at the woman has gone through in her life. She swore her oaths to her country. She has never put a foot wrong. She has put up with so much, and there is nothing bad anyone could ever say about the woman. It would be impossible. She has served her country.
I don't think there's any disputing that. Is what you just said, is that a common view, do you think, in the UK tonight?
Absolutely. I mean, talking to all my friends, my family, everyone is in mourning for Her Majesty, everyone.
I hate even to ask this, but what happens next with King Charles?
I adore him. I think he is going to make a great king. And, he's been waiting a long time. He knows what he has to do. How many years has he been watching his mother and learning from his mother and his father? And I think he is going to stand in as king, and I think that he will be a great king.
So you think the monarchy will continue?
I hope so. I'm a royalist, and I really, really hope so.
Amazing. I had no idea you were a royalist. And of course I have to ask you, because I can't control myself. Meghan Markle, where does she fit in to all of this?
To the royal family? Well,
right. So there were reports that she was not participating in the mourning. Is that true?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But as far as the royal family are concerned, Harry and Meghan stepped back. So as far as the future of the royal family, I don't think that they will be of service to their country or the Commonwealth, because they chose to step back and, they do their own thing, and that's it.
Yeah, they certainly do. They do their own thing, and that's nicely put. Sharon Osbourne, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I did that interview because of the Sharon Osbourne aspect of it, but, man, I don't understand why people watch Tucker. All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about some shakeup in the Democrat Party from Insider. Democrat Tim Ryan of Ohio says a generational change in leadership is needed ahead of Biden's visit. From Nicole Gaudiano, Gaudiano, that's what it is. Democrat Tim Ryan said on the eve of President Biden's visit in Ohio, said it's time for generational change in leadership when asked if he thinks Biden should run for re-election in 2024. Ryan, who's locked in a close race with GOP author and venture capital executive J.D. Vance for Ohio's open Senate seat, is appearing with Biden in the Licking County, Ohio on Friday when the president attends a groundbreaking of a new Intel semiconductor manufacturing facility, a project that Ryan has called transformational. Biden using the appearance to promote a new law to bolster the U.S. semiconductor manufacturing industry that is considered a win for his administration. And it's probably going to be a win for most of the people who have chips in their portfolios. But when asked directly if Biden should run in 2024, Ryan said in a television interview in Youngstown's WFMJ that his hunch is that the generational move in leadership is needed across the board for Democrats and Republicans. I think the environment politically across the country is poisonous, he said. People, I think, want some change, and, it's important for us to, I think, on both parties, like these leaders who have been around for a while, I think it's time for some generational change, which, of course, I've been trying to do for a while now. Ryan, who ran against Biden in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, isn't the first Democrat to suggest Biden shouldn't run for re-election. Suggest because he can't come out and say that because he will be crucified by his people. Dean Phillips of Minnesota in July called for a new generation of leaders, and Rep. Angie Craig, also of Minnesota, said she agreed with Phillips. Former President Trump won Ohio in both the 2016 and 2020 presidential elections. Ryan, who was campaigning for the seat held by retiring GOP Senator Rob Portman, skipped Biden's July 6th visit to Cleveland. During his television interview, Ryan said that he's campaigning as an independent, probably because the Democrat brand is completely toxic right now. Has agreed with Trump on certain trade and defense issues. He said that he isn't asking anyone to campaign for him, including Biden. He said he agrees with Biden on the semiconductor chips and infrastructure, but he doesn't think that he's being tough enough on China, doing enough with natural gas, or being firm enough on border issues. When I agree with him, I'll agree with him. When I disagree, I'll disagree. I'll be the messenger of this campaign, he said. And this does have the full interview clip, but we've read the important parts off of that, and I don't know how long that is either, because we had to go back and archive this. So the rats are already circling, coming in and saying, "Hey, what should we do? Should we support the president, or should we throw him under the bus like everybody else?" Another one from the Daily Wire. This one we will watch the video for. Sitting congressman says U.S. Constitution is an accident waiting to happen. This, by the way, in a perfect world, would mean that the forced resignation of said sitting congressman because, and I can't stress this enough, your oath is to uphold the Constitution. Your oath of office is not to the president, to a political party. It is to the Constitution. Which, I mean, most of them have broken their oaths anyway, but this right here, this should come with a resignation speech, and in a perfect world, it would. This is from Virginia Kruta. And who is it, of course? Jamie Raskin. Congressman Jamie Raskin took issue Friday with the constitutionally mandated manner in which presidents are elected, calling the Electoral College an accident waiting to happen. Raskin, who was a constitutional law professor prior to his time in Congress, told MSDNC host Chris Hayes that the system as a whole was vulnerable and the Electoral College had allowed room for strategic bad faith actors like former President Trump. Let's listen.
Authoritarian cult of Donald Trump.
Final question for you. You were a constitutional law professor before you were a United States congressman. I would like to hear you talk about these different aspects of an inquiry or making the case here. I mean, your committee doesn't have criminal prosecutorial power, nor should it. It's a congressional committee. There's a difference between what I would call the great crime of Donald Trump, which was a frontal assault on the core of American democracy, and whatever statutory violation of the U.S. Code he may have committed. And sometimes it can feel like a little bit of a mismatch there. And I wonder how you think about those sort of two lanes.
Well, obviously, we're going to need some legislative changes to the criminal code to account for now the possibility of presidents just taking a headlong rush at seizing the presidency. But there are federal statutes out there that will do the job. We, of course, have seditious conspiracy, and we have conspiracy to interfere with a federal proceeding, which I think everybody can agree took place here. After all, the whole chant was "Stop the Steal," and they bum rushed the Capitol. They assaulted federal officers, all in order to interfere with a federal proceeding. Everybody agrees that's exactly what took place, and it didn't happen by accident.
I don't agree that that's what took place. I think a lot of people went out there to make sure their voices were heard, and a few bad faith actors, FBI, stood in the front of it and busted out windows and says, "Hey guys, the window's open. Head on in."
Accident, and it wasn't spontaneous. Even if it were spontaneous, of course, there were people who agreed to go in together and do it. But this thing was planned. So, yeah, I think that we're going to have to look at some.
Yeah, it was planned, but not by the people that you're trying to convince us that planned it.
New federal statutory changes, and we have to look at the way that the electoral system itself is vulnerable to strategic bad faith actors like Donald Trump. The Electoral College is an accident waiting to happen, and we have to deal with that at some point in American history, and why not now?
All right, Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you so much for your time.
Well, here's the thing. If that's the way you feel about it, we have an amendment process for our Constitution. Go ahead, write the law, present it, get it through the House, get it through the Senate, pass the filibuster, get it to the president's desk. Then get it out and see if you can get 33 states on board with it, including several of those states that are going to be negatively affected by a national popular vote. and then turn around and get it back through another Congress after you've gone through and done that, and through the presidency again. We have an amendment process. If you are that confident that you can get that out of there, go ahead and do it. But yeah, right there, that should be an admission that comes with a resignation. All right, what else do we have? Charlie Crist. Political mercenary. Anna Navarro calls out former Republican, then Independent, and now Democrat Charlie Crist to his face. From Chris Pandolfo. Looks like we've got a couple of clips here. Because Crist went on to The View and, DeSantis is, he's too afraid to do this. So I've got 3 clips that we're going to go through with this. Florida Democratic gubernatorial candidate Charlie Crist, who has lost 3 statewide elections running in different parties, was grilled on his long record of political flip-flop by fellow Floridian and former GOP strategist Anna Navarro during an appearance on The View. Navarro, a longtime critic of Crist, called him a political mercenary and asked him to explain why skeptical voters should believe any of his positions are sincerely held. You've been in 16 elections in the last 3 decades. In that time, you've gone from staunch Republican to an Independent to a Democrat, Navarro said on Friday. Your own words, Charlie, have come back to haunt you and have been used against you. The View cut to a clip of a robocall Crist recorded during his 2006 campaign for governor in Florida as a Republican. In the message, Crist says he's pro-life, opposes amnesty, supports traditional marriage, and opposes gay adoption, and opposes raising taxes and big spending. Let's listen.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming here today because in case anyone's missed the news lately, well, it's not the news really, your opponent, Ron DeSantis, refuses to come on this show.
That's a shame.
So I say, if you're afraid, if you can't deal with us, how are you going to deal with, Kim Jong-un and Putin? You can't even take on Sonny Hudson and Sarah Haynes.
Why would a state-level politician be taking on Kim Jong-un? Or Putin, for that matter?
You know what I mean? It's like a cowardly move on his part. So I give you points for coming here today.
On his
Why
part?
do you think he refuses to come on this show?
I don't know. He's also refused to do a statewide debate in Florida. And I don't know what he's afraid of. I'm a pretty nice guy, generally. And you're all lovely people. So I don't know why he doesn't.
I think he should do a statewide debate. He really should. Mostly because he will crush Crist. But he is currently an incumbent, which means he's also in the process of, governing Florida. It's not like the Kari Lake Katie Hobbs debate where, neither one of them is sitting in office right now. So they've got all the time in the world to come back out and debate. But I still think that, Ron should go back out and debate. I can find a reason that he's not doing it, but I don't like it. And I think he should be out there. Anna Navarro plays an old robocall Crist put out and calls him a political mercenary and demands he explain his constant flip-flopping.
You've been in 16 elections in the last 3 decades. In that time, you've gone from a staunch Republican to an Independent to a Democrat. Your own words, Charlie, have come back to haunt you, have been used against you. They were used against you. You did a robocall in 2006, which was part of a campaign, Republican campaign against you, and is now coming up again. And so I'd like us to hear it, and I'd like you to explain what the deal is.
So you don't have to debate DeSantis. You can debate Navarro.
Hi, this is Charlie Crist calling to set the record straight. I'm pro-life. I oppose amnesty for illegal immigrants. I support traditional marriage. and I have never supported a new tax or big spending program. I support a constitutional amendment to protect traditional marriage, and I oppose adoption by gay couples. And I work to ensure the right to display the Ten Commandments in public places. Floridians need a consistent conservative governor that they can trust. I would appreciate your vote on Election Day. Thank you so much, and God bless you, and God bless Florida.
So,
Yeah.
those are your words. What would you say to skeptics like me who think you've changed parties because you're a political mercenary and it was out of convenience? How should we trust you? How do you convince me?
I changed parties because my party changed. You know, it started with the rise of the Tea Party back in 2009 and 2010. And it really has metastasized since then. And, you know, I just couldn't stomach it anymore to see how, you know, not all Republicans, I don't want to paint too broad a brush here because there's a lot of good Republicans in Florida and in our country. And what I understand, though, is that the party has changed dramatically from what it was when I was a Republican. And what I've seen is that it's so anti-minority, frankly, this governor is, making it harder for African Americans to vote in my state, making it harder for senior citizens like my 90-year-old father, my 87-year-old mother. Mail-in balloting is more difficult in Florida now.
Banning books.
Pardon?
Banning books.
Banning books. I mean, it goes on and on.
All right, so that is the second clip that we have here, and then we go on to another one here. Despite Navarro noting that GOP positions have largely stayed the same, Chris keeps insisting it's the Republican Party that's changed. Sonny Hostin pushes him on gay marriage and abortion.
But Charlie, let's talk about the policies, the issues you were embracing in that robocall. You called pro-life. You called yourself being for traditional marriage, against gay marriage. You went after illegal immigrants. So where are you now, and why so it's not about the Republic. Actually, you were embracing a lot of the policy issues back then that Republicans still embrace now. So what has changed?
I think the party's changed dramatically, like I said before, Anna. I really believe that. I'm not just spitballing here.
Have you changed your views on gay marriage?
Yeah, about the same time President Obama did. Oh. I did, yeah. And I thought his interview was incredible on that when he said, "Who am I to tell other people who to love?" He said he had talked to his wife, he had talked to his daughters about it, and he had come around to the position that, you know, that's not for government to do. That's for individuals to decide on their own.
What about pro-life?
I am pro-choice. In fact, my history is really clear.
Now that's a very big shift.
Well, it isn't, and let me explain.
Yeah.
And judge me by my deeds. So I first served in the state Senate when Anna and I got to know each other. And, you know, in that, I was on a health care committee. I voted against an anti-abortion bill in that committee. It was a 24-hour rating period. Because of my no vote, the bill died in committee on a 6-6 tie. It never went to the Senate floor. As governor of Florida and a Republican, I vetoed an anti-abortion bill that would have required an ultrasound for a woman and made her pay for it, too. And then, in my 6 years almost now in Congress, I've got a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, a 100% rating from NARAL, and just got endorsed by Planned Parenthood in this race for governor.
Yeah, I don't think Charlie Crist is going to do very well, you know, once people come back out and start to see where he's at. But I also kind of understand the strategy out there and the way that people voted, because he was running far ahead of Nikki Fried, who is in a very, very red state, super far left progressive, and why he mopped the floor with her. But, I mean, he is another one of those where he just kind of goes where the wind takes him, where the political winds go. And I've also got to figure out why it is. Like, I can go on to the Restream side and change the title, or not the title, but the category on Twitch to Fallout 3, but for whatever reason, when I try to change it back, it doesn't change back on the Restream side. So I guess I do have to remember to go back in and manually change it over in the Twitch side, because that's that happens every time on over the weekend when I go play Fallout 3. Thank you, McLeod, for changing that back. All right, that's what we have for this. Let's talk about this beheading in the Bay Area, disturbing as it is. From the New York Post, California beheading victim ID'd, accuses killer is her daughter's dad. From Dana Kennedy. A 27-year-old mother of two has been identified as the victim, beheaded on a street in Northern California last week. Karina Castro, who worked as a DoorDash driver, left behind 7-year-old and 1-year-old girls, KGO-TV reported. Her youngest daughter was fathered by the man who's been arrested for her murder, 33-year-old Jose Rafael Solano Landaeda, who goes by the name Rafa Solano. Her father, Marty Castro, told the outlet, "Every time I saw her, I would beg her, don't talk to him. Leave him, and it seemed like the more that I did that, the more she would see him." Yeah, that's typically the case, actually. Solano had been violent with Castro before, and she got a restraining order against him in April, but continued to see him, Castro's family said. Deputies from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office found Karina's body Thursday in San Carlos, south of San Francisco, after being flagged down by a witness, law enforcement sources told KNTV. Her head had been cut off with a sword, the local outlet reported. Solano was taken into custody after he returned to the scene. Karina's grandmother, Danielle Genin, told KGO that Landaeda was diagnosed schizophrenic on meds. He would use that as an excuse for his behavior, she said. He drank excessively, and you're not supposed to do that on those kinds of medications. Yeah, no, you're probably not. Now, a few things that go along with this. A few things to talk about when we see something that happens like this. Number one, this is a case. This is a strong case against the gun control argument, because if the dude can't run back out and get a gun to go carry out his rage, which it appears in the situation that he was in, and we'll talk about that in a moment, which it appears in the situation that he was not in a position where he could get a firearm. We've got to bring that back over here, and this over here as well. But if he can't get a firearm, he just went out and got a sword and took off his ex-old lady's head. It doesn't matter what the instrument is. Evil is evil, and we'll find a way. Alright, from KTLA 5, young mother beheaded outside Bay Area home, ID'd suspect in custody. The shocking killing happened at 11:50 a.m. in broad daylight on Thursday when a 27-year-old woman, later identified by her sister as Karina Castro, was attacked outside her apartment in the well-to-do San Francisco Bay Area city of San Carlos. Witnesses flagged down deputies to alert them of the ongoing sword attack, according to San Mateo County Sheriff's Lieutenant Eamon Allen. Allen said the violence stemmed from a domestic dispute between the suspect, 33-year-old Jose Rafael Solano Landaeda, and Castro, who is the mother of two. There was an ongoing relationship between the two, Allen said. Landaeda fled on foot before deputies arrived just moments before the grisly attack, Allen said. Landaeda ran 2 blocks away, but he later returned to the crime scene unarmed. Deputies combed the neighborhood trying to find the murder weapon. There was ample enough time for him to have concealed it, Allen said. This is believed to be an isolated incident. There's no ongoing threat to the community, the sheriff's office wrote. Might skip this one over. Yeah, let's skip this one here, but we have one last detail on this one, unfortunately. And I'm going to preface what I'm about to say as the fact that, and a lot of people are pointing out, that there is a bit of a difference between the people who are just coming and rushing the border right now and this guy. Because he was, in fact, according to PJ Media, update, beheaded mom identified, and guess what? The killer is an illegal immigrant with an expired visa. Now again, as I point out, this is not the same as the people who are rushing out the border, jumping over the fences, jumping over the barriers, getting injured, etc., or doing whatever they can to try to get into the country with no documentation. This is somebody who did go through the legal process, had his visa expire, and just refused to leave. So that is something else that we have to pay attention to on the immigrant side of things. But in counter, people are also pointing out the fact that in many of these Central American countries, murder is not viewed in the same way that it is here. Regardless, that's what we're seeing coming off of this. Man, how screwed up do you have to be, though, to just run out in the middle of an upscale neighborhood in the broad daylight and cut the head off the mother of your children? That seems excessive. From the Blaze. This is an interesting one, speaking of crime and punishment. Now, we heard, and the mainstream media wouldn't come back out and say anything about it. We heard about the murder. We talked about this on Friday. The murder of a journalist by a staffer in Vegas. And then it turned out that this particular staffer in Vegas was a Democrat. But see, we didn't hear that from the mainstream media. We had to go to the Daily Wire for that. Well, the Blaze goes off with this and tells us a reporter has now tried to blame Trump for the Vegas Democrat allegedly stabbing a journalist to death. From Courtney Wheel. Is there video of this? There is video of this. A reporter tried to compel a Vegas sheriff to condemn former President Trump after police arrested a local Democrat politician for the murder of an investigative journalist. On Thursday, the sheriff of the Vegas Metro Police Department, Joe Lombardo, took to the podium to address questions from the media regarding a recent high-profile arrest the day before Clark County Public Administrator Robert Tellis was arrested for the gruesome murder of Jeff German, a reporter for the Vegas Review-Journal, a story that had naturally drawn the attention of the media throughout the country. But one reporter, whose name has not been given, instead queried Lombardo about Trump, likely attempting to reorient the conversation from a discussion about the violent actions of one person into a larger statement about the former president, because, again, that's all they really have at this point. Let's listen.
So why are we talking politics then?
Do you condemn former President Trump's normalization of violence against journalists?
No, I think this is probably the inappropriate venue to speculate on that or opine on that. I think it needs to be stated and noted that it is troublesome because it is a journalist, and we expect journalism to be open and transparent and a watchdog for government. And when people take it upon themselves to create harm associated with that profession, I think it's very important that we put all eyes on and address the case appropriately, such as we did in this case.
Oopsie. Yeah, screw that up again. It's funny, and they're going to come back out here and try to come back and run and do this again, but it's like, oh, well, Trump called the free press the enemy of the American people, so of course that this politician is going to come back out and do so. And again, no, an evil person did an evil thing. And I really don't want to bring into this the profession of the person who was killed. Because once again, an individual who had hate in his heart went back out and did a hateful thing. It's unclear why the reporter believed a Democrat politician would exact violence against a reporter because of comments Trump made. Oh, because it shifts the narrative off, and it doesn't let them look at the Democrat Party at large again. That's why. It's also unclear in what way the former president normalized violence against journalists. Yeah, I know why. Everybody else knows why too. Here's some good news. We've had so much bad news so far. Here's some good news for you. From 12 News NBC out of Arizona. Judge grants injunction to halt Arizona's new law restricting police videos. Good. From 12 News, no author given. A federal judge has granted an injunction to halt the enforcement of a new state law that restricts how citizens can record interactions with police officers. A controversial bill signed by Doug Ducey in July makes it illegal to knowingly film police officers from 8 feet away or closer without the officer's permission. Violators of the new law could be charged with a Class 3 misdemeanor. House Bill 2319 still allows citizens subjected to traffic stop to record their interactions with police as long as they're not interfering with lawful police actions. The ACLU sued the state officials to stop them from enforcing the law, arguing it infringes upon the First Amendment rights of citizens and journalists. 12 News and other news outlets were listed as plaintiffs in the case. On Friday, a judge granted the plaintiffs preliminary injunction to stop the law from taking effect on September 24th, so that its merits could be further debated in court. We're glad to see the court take action to stop it from going into effect, the ACLU wrote in a statement. Well, good. And again, I preface this on the fact that I hate the fact that you guys are trying to make me defend the ACLU, but the ACLU got it right on this one. I don't normally say that, but the ACLU got it right. It is the responsibility of the citizens, and especially the journalists, but the citizens at large, to hold the government responsible. If that's by recording, if that's by witnessing, or eyewitness reports, or anything else, but with evidence to go with it. It is your responsibility to make sure that the people of the government are doing things in a way that's constitutional. And if they're not, you should be able to go back out and tell the rest of the world, hey, this particular government agency is scum. They suck. You should be able to do that. Law enforcement is not infallible. As much as our friends on the left want to make them infallible again until, well, it's time to win an election against a Republican, and then all cops will be bastards again. But this is important. Good job, ACLU. I will give credit where credit's due. From the Daily Wire, Manchin's Inflation Reduction Act side deal beginning to fall apart. Dozens of Democrats signal opposition. This is going to be hilarious to me. If progressives turn around and tank this thing because it didn't go far enough, putting the cap on an administration that really was a do-nothing administration, I am going to laugh incessantly and excessively. From John Rigolizzo. The side deal Senate Democrats cut with Joe Manchin is beginning to fall apart as dozens of Democrats announced their opposition to it. Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer struck a deal with Manchin in order to secure a critical vote to pass their $740 billion tax and climate law, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. In exchange for Manchin's vote, Schumer agreed to include reforms to the oil and gas permitting process in a stopgap government funding bill, but dozens of House Democrats signed a letter to Democrat leadership Friday opposing the permitting reforms. The permitting and public notice and comment provisions mandated by the National Environmental Policy Act are among the only tools local communities have to force careful review of federal projects that may have serious long-term environmental and public health consequences in those communities. Democrats wrote the letter to House Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. Congress should continue to provide increased funding to assist federal agencies in completing the NEPA process, but attempts to short-circuit or undermine the law in the name of reform must be opposed. The Democrats called the permitting reforms anti-environmental and anti-environmental justice and accused them of being advanced at the behest of the American Petroleum Institute. These permitting reforms would weaken other important public health protections, including the Clean Water Act and more. They wrote Democrats also claimed that the reforms would significantly and disproportionately impact low-income communities indigenous communities and communities of color, and silence so-called frontline communities by shortening the legal review and public comment process attempting to pass such reforms, and a budget bill would force the members to choose between protecting these communities or funding the government. We urge you to ensure that these provisions are kept out of a continuing resolution or any other must-pass legislation this year. The letter was authored by House Natural Resources Committee Chairman Paul Grijalva of Arizona and signed by 72 House Democrats. In addition to House Democrats, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, said that he would oppose the Manchin deal in a speech on the floor of Senate Thursday. I rise this morning to express my strong opposition to the so-called side deal that the fossil fuel industry is pushing to make it easier for them to pollute the environment and destroy the planet, Sanders said. I'm urging all of my colleagues to reject this dirty side deal. So, my first question here is, did the Inflation Reduction Act pass? Is that done? And is this now a stab in the back to Manchin? And my second question is if yes, did Schumer plan it this way? So they could go and secure the vote and still turn around and take exact revenge on the man who was a thorn in everybody's side. I don't know. I would love to see the Inflation Reduction Act crash. But we will continue to watch that. From CNBC, VP Harris attacks activist court, says the loss of rights post-Roe has led to suffering. From Ben Commissar, coming to CNBC via regular NBC. Vice President Harris denounced the current Supreme Court as an activist body in the wake of the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. I mean, it's always been an activist body. It's just an activist body that you don't like the direction it's going in right now. I think this is an activist court, Harris told NBC News' Chuck Todd, moderator of Meet the Depressed, when asked about polling that shows the nation's confidence in the court hitting an all-time low. We might go grab another Daily Wire article to get the video of this. But we have another piece of the Meet the Press interview. We had an established right for almost a half a century, which is the right of women to make decisions about their own body as an extension of what we have decided to be the privacy rights to which all people are entitled. And this court took that constitutional right away, and we are suffering as a nation because of it. Harris went on to say someone who has been inspired by people like Thurgood Marshall and the work of Chief Justice Earl Warren on the court decisions like Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, which struck down school segregation, and the court's actions cause her great concerns about the integrity of the court overall. Arguing that the current court has departed from the approach of the court when justices like Earl Warren, Marshall, and Sandra Day O'Connor sat on it, Harris proclaimed that this is a very different court. This is an activist court, but they're doing activism like I don't like. Let me check this out and see if we can find the video of this. I know I have a video of the border side of it, but I also know that, let's see. Yep, we've got that too. So we'll have 2 Daily Wires in a row, but just because of video. So let's listen to this part about the activist court.
We have some polling that shows confidence in the Supreme Court is at its lowest level that we've measured in over 20 years. How much confidence do you have in the Supreme Court?
I think this is an activist court.
What does that mean?
It means that we had an established right for almost half a century, which is the right of women to make decisions about their own body as an extension of what we have decided to be the privacy rights to which all people are entitled. And this court took that constitutional right away. And we are suffering as a nation because of it. That causes me great concern about the integrity of the court overall, especially as someone who my life was inspired by people like Thurgood Marshall. The work on that court of Earl Warren to bring a unanimous court to pass Brown v. Board of Education. This is the court that once sat Earl Warren and Thurgood Marshall. Sandra Day O'Connor. It's a very different court.
Dude, she still can't string together a proper sentence. I was curious about the other person that they brought up here, Earl Warren. Who was nominated by Eisenhower, because of course he was. Chief Justice from 53 to 69. He was also governor of California, AG of California, and chair of the California Republican Party. All right. But it wasn't just the court that Chuck Todd asked Harris about. Chuck Todd is clearly not buying Kamala Harris's claim that the border is secure. From Virginia Kruta, MSDNC anchor Chuck Todd appeared to have a difficult time accepting Vice President Harris's assertion that the U.S.-Mexico border was secure. Harris gave an interview with Todd that aired on Sunday morning's broadcast of Meet the Depressed, where she claimed the immigration system was broken, but the border was secure, despite the fact that, as Todd quickly pointed out, 2 million were expected to cross the border for the first time in history. Let's listen.
Final topic here, since we're here in Texas, I want to ask you about the border. Would you call the border secure?
I think that there is no question that we have to do what the President and I asked Congress to do. Is the first request we made. Pass a bill to create a pathway to citizenship. The border is secure, but we also have a broken immigration system, in particular over the last 4 years before we came in, and it needs to be fixed.
We're going to have 2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration. But there are still a lot of problems.
Dude, she is short-circuiting. Danger, danger. Journalist not feeding me softball questions. Danger, danger. Subroutine. Repeat. Allegation. Border secure.
That we are trying to fix, given the deterioration that happened over the last 4 years. We also have to put in place a law and a plan for a pathway for citizenship for the millions of people who are here and are prepared to do what is legally required to gain citizenship. We don't have that in place because people are playing politics in a state like this and in Congress. By the way, you want to talk about bipartisanship on an issue that at one time was a bipartisan issue, both in terms of Republican senators and even presidents.
Right now, one of our inflationary problems is we don't have enough labor, particularly in the service economy.
You're right.
Just listening to her short story, like, it's hard enough watching her speak normally, but then to go back out there and, again, be expected to be given softball questions, easy questions from MSNBC, and have Chuck Todd come back out and throw a hardball at her. I'm surprised we didn't see people calling for his resignation again over the weekend, honestly. All right, from the Hill. South Carolina Senate rejects near total abortion ban. And I am not surprised by any stretch of the imagination. From Chloe Fulmar. Hey, look, Ellie Mistel is on a panel over here, which means that we're probably about to hear how white people are the root of every problem that's ever been. We're not going to watch that. The South Carolina Senate failed to pass a ban on abortions earlier than 6 weeks into pregnancy on Thursday. The controversial bill was altered over 2 days of debate on the floor, moving it closer to the current South Carolina abortion ban that's tied up in court. This is not where I wanted to be. I was hoping that we'd have a more aggressive, but it's clear to me the votes are not there in the Senate for an abortion ban before 6 weeks, said State Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey in response to the 2 days of debate over the initial proposal. The altered law, passed 27-16 vote, joins the state's current abortion law in banning abortions after 6 weeks, at which point fetal cardiac activity can be detected by ultrasound. The fetal heartbeat law was passed last year, but only took effect after the Supreme Court's decision on Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization overturned Roe v. Wade. The law was suspended by the South Carolina Supreme Court this summer for potentially violating the state constitution. Now, of course, it's not the California Supreme Court, because the California Supreme Court says, hey, is it crowning? Yeah, you can still have an abortion. Oh, did you already have the baby? Oh, it's been 2 days? Oh, you can still have an abortion. Let's see. The new law differs from the old heartbeat law in limiting exceptions, allowing the victims of rape and incest 3 months to get abortions rather than the initially decided 5 months. The law will require doctors to collect DNA samples from aborted feti to aid law enforcement in prosecuting rapists. Based. The law also requires 2 doctors to confirm the diagnosis that a fetus will be unable to survive outside the womb, meaning that it can be aborted based on the law's exceptions. State Senator Sandy Senn, one of 2 Republicans who opposed the final measure, criticized the new bill for its lack of progress despite the minor changes between the old and new abortion bans. We've been here for 2 days and 2 nights, and we're basically back to the same bill we passed a year ago, and the Supreme Court has taken off the table, at least temporarily, she said. Planned Parenthood weighed in the bill on Friday, criticizing it and other restrictive abortion bills written in the wake of Dobbs because Planned Parenthood needs more business. They need more body parts to sell, which means they need to develop their feti. And they need more people to be coming in at the last moment after they've convinced these poor young women that the only option is to sacrifice their children to Moloch. So, that is what we have off that. And really, honestly, while the number changes, a full-on ban, I don't think plays well with the American people. The American people seem to want it to be available, but with restrictions. That seems to be the consensus of everything. Now, where the restrictions go, it's different from state to state. South Carolina wants 6 weeks. Texas wants 6 weeks. California wants 2 days after birth. Virginia at one point wanted 2 days after birth. Honestly, the consensus seems to be 6 to 12 weeks. After that, have the baby. Put it up for adoption. Which I do think that we are moving in the right direction at that point. Of course, as per usual, my thought is that I'd love to have no abortion, but I would love to have no abortion because we're in a situation where people have taken measures to prevent it. That we fixed it on a societal level so we don't have to legislate it. Because the government really does suck at everything. Will that happen? Probably not. But is that the way that I'd like to see everything? Yes, absolutely. I'd love for every woman who got pregnant to look at it as a blessing. Say, I'm going to bring a little bundle of joy into the world. But on top of that, that's also the same fanciful world where the porn stars really do love each other. Very, very much. Speaking of abortion, from MLive, what's in Michigan's abortion amendment? The 3 proposals on your ballot explained. There's an author. From Ben Orner. In a post-Roe America, abortion rights are now up to individual states, and in Michigan, voters will decide whether to enshrine those rights in the state constitution. That is the saddest thing in the world to put in your state's constitution, by the way. Reproductive freedom for all on the ballot as Proposal 3 would guarantee reproductive rights for generations to come, but the right to an abortion is not the only major initiative Michiganders will decide at the ballot box this fall. Oh. Okay. That's all that we have on this article. There was more on that before I archived it, so I don't know if they've screwed things up for the archives, or if they just didn't finish this article. I'll have to look into that and see if they found a way to get around the archive, because I know that the mainstream media outlets and even the minor media outlets, the local media outlets, don't like the ability to archive things, because then they can go back and soft edit them, and they can't block you from seeing things if you don't pay for it. We're gonna put a pin in that, and we're gonna go look at that again. From the Hill. No, not from the Hill. We read that already. From Fox. One up out of my neck of the woods. Migrants bust to sanctuary city Chicago are promptly shipped off to the suburbs. From Andrea Vasciano. A group of over 100 migrants from the southern border were moved to an Illinois suburb after being welcomed in Chicago, an action that's reportedly frustrating local officials. The migrants are staying at a Hampton and Burr Ridge and Holiday Inn and Countryside, according to reporting by WGN. An estimated 300 migrants have been bused from Texas to Chicago in the past 2 weeks. While Chicago is a sanctuary city and Cook County is a sanctuary county, the migrants at Burr Ridge Hampton Inn are in DuPage County. The county sanctuary status is unclear. However, Burr Ridge Republican Mayor Gary Grasso previously said that he would work to secure the border and defund sanctuary cities, according to WGN TV. Now, Grasso said he's frustrated by the sudden influx of migrants. I'm the mayor of the village. I should have been told. I'm as frustrated as Mayor Lightfoot was in her not being told, Mayor Gary Grasso said. I'm frustrated, but we're dealing with the situation, and I'm going to keep my residents and my businesses apprised. Grasso referenced Mayor Lightfoot previously lashing out at Governor Abbott for the transportation of migrants, calling it unacceptable at a press conference this week. My frustration comes from the actions of the governor of Texas, the Chicago mayor said. There could be a level of coordination, but he chooses to do none of these things. Instead, he chooses to send human beings across the country to an uncertain destination. He's manufacturing a human crisis that makes no sense to me, Lightfoot added. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker made similar comments, accusing Abbott of treating migrants like cattle. Abbott shot back at Lightfoot's comments, accusing her of deflecting the blame to him instead of President Biden. But let's be completely realistic to this. The point always was, when it came to open borders, when it came to the immigration crises, to flood red areas that reliably, like Burr Ridge, by the way, reliably vote Republican, to flood those with new immigrant voters with a path to citizenship, and an exclamation that anybody who is on the right wants to just deport them back to Mexico. Even if they become naturalized citizens, just to deport them back out. To flood and take the jobs away in red areas. And what is Lightfoot doing? Immediately taking them out of blue, Cook County, putting them out into purple, DuPage County, and red, Burr Ridge. So they take them out of red Texas and put them into red Burr Ridge. More on this from The Blaze. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser responds to bus migrants by declaring state of emergency and launching new $10 million Office of Migrant Services. From Candace Hathaway. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser announced Thursday that the influx of migrants bused to the sanctuary city caused public emergency. As a result, the mayor introduced plans to establish an Office of Migrant Services to provide additional assistance to the individuals. In a November 2016 statement, Bowser reaffirmed Washington, D.C. as a sanctuary city, noting, "We celebrate our diversity and respect all D.C. residents, no matter their immigration status." Since April 2022, Texas and Arizona have reportedly been sending approximately 9,400 migrants on buses to the D.C. area. During the Thursday news conference, Bowser gave her thoughts on why Texas and Arizona officials are sending migrants to the capital. Well, it's easy because they have assured us over and over again that they're a sanctuary city, which means that they want those people there. We know that they're targeting DC not because of any particular ties that the people boarding the buses have to DC, but they want to make a political point to the federal government. No, you assured us that you're a sanctuary city, which means that the people will be safe there from ICE. Some people are taking this ride to get to their destinations along the way because it gets them closer to their final destination, said Bowser, and some because they have nowhere else to go, and quite frankly, I believe that some are being tricked or lied to. Bowser asked for additional support from the federal government, and she said that she thought it could be doing more to help the capital. The mayor requested the help from the National Guard twice, but the Department of Defense denied the assistance both times. By declaring a public state of emergency, Bowser gains additional administrative authority to temporarily make decisions that her position would not otherwise grant, WTTG reported. So again, it's not a problem when these people go into Texas, Arizona, Wisconsin, and disappear. But once they go to the places that have not named themselves as sanctuary cities, then it's a problem. A little bit of foreign news for us here. From Reuters, new North Korea law outlines nuclear arms use, including preemptive strikes. From Joshua Smith. North Korea has officially enshrined the right to use preemptive nuclear strikes to protect itself in a new law that leaders Kim Jong-un said makes its nuclear status irreversible and bars denuclearization talks, its state media reported on Friday. The Secretary General of the UN, which has long-standing sanctions on North Korea's nuclear and missile program, said that he was deeply concerned by the new law and reiterated calls for Pyongyang to return to a denuclearization talks, I almost did a Biden. The link is for read more, and I almost read it as read more. End of sentence. Repeat the line. The U.S. said it has no hostile intent towards North Korea and is willing to resume talks without preconditions. North Korea's move comes as observers say North Korea appears to be preparing to resume nuclear testing for the first time since 2017, after historic summits with then U.S. President Donald Trump and other world leaders in 2018 failed to persuade Kim to abandon his weapons development. North Korea's rubber-stamped parliament, the Supreme People's Assembly, passed legislation on Thursday as a replacement to a 2013 law that first outlined the country's nuclear status, according to the country's state news agency, KCNA. Yeah, you know what? Who could have seen that coming? You've got a little guy, a little fat dude with little fat dude syndrome, who was mocked incessantly by the Obama admin, who was up throwing around his weight in nuclear tests under the Obama admin, who stopped when he realized that Pyongyang might be wiped off the map by a guy he couldn't predict. And as soon as the guy he couldn't predict is backed out of office, hey, guess what? We're back to it. Who could have seen that coming? From ABC. North Korea says it will never give up nukes to counter the US. From Kim Tong-wing. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un stressed his country will never abandon the nuclear weapons it needs to counter the US, which he accused of pushing to weaken the North's defenses and eventually collapse his government, state media said on Friday. Kim made the comments during a speech on Thursday at North Korea's rubber stamp parliament, where members passed legislation governing the use of nuclear weapons, which Kim described as a step to cement the country's nuclear status and make clear that such weapons will not be bargained. Law spells out conditions where North Korea would be inclined to use its nuclear weapons, facing imminent nuclear or non-nuclear attack by hostile forces. The law requires North Korea's military to automatically execute nuclear strikes against enemy forces, including their starting point of provocation and the command, if Pyongyang's leadership comes under attack. The law says North Korea could use nukes to prevent an unspecified catastrophic crisis to its government and people, a loose definition that experts say reflects an escalatory nuclear doctrine that could create greater concerns for its neighbors. Boy, do you remember that time where we didn't have to sit and worry about North Korea? Yeah, who could have seen this coming? In 2 years' time, the Soviet Union has boiled back over. China and Taiwan are getting ready to go back to war. And North Korea is launching off nukes. With no oversight. But hey, we have no more mean tweets. From the Daily Caller. The Honorable and Venerable Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez says she wasn't sure if she wanted to marry her boyfriend because he's white. Okay, this whole meme where Riley is holding the camera with the bored look on his face and people have said that's his favorite sexual position, man, that just took on a whole new meaning. From Brianna Lyman. Democratic New York Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez said she wasn't sure if she wanted to marry her now fiance because he's white. Chavez met her fiance, Riley Roberts, at BU when they were both 19, according to GQ. The pair eventually began dating a few years later and have been together since. Chavez recalls how late last year the couple was discussing their New Year's resolutions when Roberts brought up an engagement. You just described the single lamest proposal in history. But I'm not surprised. It's my resolution that perhaps we can be engaged by the end of the year. Oh, well, honey, maybe we can just go out and get engaged. Dude, that's not how you do a proposal. Hell, it's not how number 3 did the proposal, and she was the one that did the proposing. You basically stop what you're doing and surprise her with it. But if you, they're what? 32 now, according to this? I think that they've added a couple years, but they're 32 now, which means they've been together since they were 19, which means they've been together for 13 years. If you have been together for 13 years, whether or not you're the cameraman and you're actually putting it to somebody, this discussion has to have come up at some point. And I said, puppy, oh really? Well, you're really gonna have to woo me, okay, puppy? You're gonna have to convince me after all this time why I should. Well, you haven't dumped him in 13 years. I do agree with some of her sentiment. That should have been a discussion that was happening long, long before that. GQ described the conversation with Chavez as the congresswoman expressing reluctancy to marry Roberts. She wasn't positive that an interracial relationship would be the right fit for her. GQ reported, nonetheless, the duo got engaged in April while vacationing in Puerto Rico. Millennial marriage practices make me sad. They really do. See, Riley, I know you'll never see this program because I'm sure that your wife-to-be carefully curates what kind of media you can see. What I'm going to tell you right off the bat with this, and this makes my brain hurt. See, the time to go in and say my resolution, the time to get engaged was not in April in Puerto Rico. The time to get engaged was the point when you said my resolution is to be engaged by the end of the year. That was the point where you should have grabbed that little felt black box and dropped down to an E. I'm not a chick. I can't speak to this. But I'm going to tell you right now, if I was a chick, and a dude said that, I'd be out the door. Yeah, I think maybe we should eventually start thinking about getting married. Dude, you've been together for 13 years. In 12 different states in this union, you're already married. Why do millennial relationships make me sad? Alright. From Fox News, Democratic candidate Vicente Gonzalez claims Mayra Flores supporters stole Texas special election. Dude, careful. I hear that's kind of talk is insurrection. From Kyle Morris. Representative Vicente Gonzalez, D. Texas, who's running for re-election in Congress in the midterm elections, claimed during an event attended by House Intelligence Committee Rep. Adam Schiff that a June special election in Texas was stolen by Mayra Flores and her supporters. The remarks from Gonzalez came during a Vote Blue event at Schatz Bar in Brownsville, Texas on Thursday. Our democracy is at stake, Gonzalez claimed. There's millions and millions of dollars from outside our region and outside our state that are coming here to try to steal our elections. Yeah, that's happening all over the country, and I do wish that would stop. There's more than that going into New York 14 to make sure that Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez stays there. Hell, there's more than that going into Vermont at this point. To keep Bernie Sanders on the seat until he dies, or gets the presidency, which he never will. And take away your value and take away the process that we rely on, which is elections. We don't have the resources to compete with these outside resources. We can't compete with the Koch brothers, and we can't compete with big oil, big tobacco, and the NRA. They can outspend us, but they can't outwork us. Taking aim at Flores, his Republican rival in the race to represent Texas' 34th district, Gonzalez says the newly elected GOP rep, who defeated her Democrat challenger in a special election to represent the redrawn district, showed up to Congress and voted against keeping communities safe. They stole the last election, Gonzalez claimed. They spent over $3 million to our $250,000. They campaigned for 2 years, and they still only won by less than 1%. So the way to turn this around is to getting out and vote. Schiff, who serves on the House Select Committee investigating the Selfie Fest, also spoke to Gonzalez's supporters at the end and offered remarks favoring his candidacy in the race. Because, of course he did, because he's Adam Schiff. From the Blaze. Men convicted in Whitmer kidnapping plot alleged juror misconduct, biased treatment from the judge. From Courtney Wheel. The two men recently convicted of plotting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and charge her with treason have requested a new trial. They claim the judge presiding over the case demonstrated prejudicial bias against them on more than one occasion, and that one of the 12 jurors had bragged to a coworker in the early stages of a trial that he or she had already thought they were guilty and wanted them to hang. Yeah, that would be jurist misconduct. If you can prove that, by the way. On Thursday, Barry Croft Jr., 46, and Adam Fox, 38, petitioned the court for a hearing on these issues, hoping the evidence presented during the hearing would convince the court to grant them a new trial. During the trial, the court filing alleges Judge Robert Junker, a judge in the District Court for the Western District of Michigan, had limited the time defense attorneys had to cross-examine a key witness, called some of the evidence offered by the defense crap, and permitted a juror who may have violated the judge's orders in 2 separate instances to remain on the jury panel. However, since this is a federal court, this is a U.S. District Court, we the people didn't get to see any of the recordings or any of the live stream of this. Throughout the trial, the defense attorneys Josh Blanchard and Christopher Gibbons wrote, the court repeatedly interjected with commentary regarding the quality of the defense evidence and questioning the time it was taking the defense counsel to complete the questioning of witnesses, made sarcastic remarks about the trial continuing until Thanksgiving, referred to the defense counsel's questioning as crap, and made other remarks that the court itself has described as dyspeptic. Well, I hope the stenographer got that all down, because I would love to see if this is actually true, and of course, as of right now, as a person, because it's, again, a federal court, I have no evidence that this is what happened. But the stenographer does. So yes, I would like to see if this is actually the case. Then these guys should get a new trial. They absolutely should. On the same side of this, in judicial bias, judge tosses Trump lawsuit against Hillary Clinton, DNC over 2016 Russia collusion claims. From Kevin Breininger. A federal judge dismissed former President Trump's sprawling lawsuit against Clinton. The DNC and many others conspired to spread false narrative of collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia during the 2016 presidential election. In a searing order on Thursday, Judge Don Middlebrooks said that Trump's lawsuit was merely seeking to flaunt a 200-page political manifesto outlining his grievances against those who have opposed him. The former president's claims are not only unsupported by any legal authority, but plainly foreclosed by binding precedent, Middlebrooks wrote in U.S. District Court in Southern Florida. Trump filed the lawsuit in March seeking tens of millions of dollars in damages for violations of the RICO Act, a federal law that aims to combat organized crime. Among other claims, it came more than 5 years after Trump defeated Clinton in a vicious scandal, so a presidential campaign where Trump's relationship with Russia was a major focus. The suit claims the defendants worked to produce false or misleading evidence of damaging ties between Trump's campaign and Russia. It names dozens of people and entities as defendants, including Clinton, the DNC, ex-Clinton aide John Podesta, the law firm Perkins Coie, research firm Fusion GPS, ex-Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook, and others. Trump claimed he suffered at least $24 million in damages as a result of the defendants' actions. His lawsuit sought to recover triple the amount in damages. Many of the amended complaint's characterizations of events are implausible because they lack any specific allegations which might provide factual support for the conclusions reached, Middlebrooks wrote in Thursday's order. What the amended complaint lacks in substance and legal support, it seeks to substitute with length, hyperbole, and the settling of scores and grievances, he wrote. Look, I don't know, because I didn't read any of the actual suit, because it's 200 pages long. If there is a case to be made, I can look back and see where the constant Russian claims have given damage out to the ability to make policy and make law. That's readily apparent. But as far as this goes, I don't know where this is, if this is sour grapes or if this is actually anything legitimate. From Insider. Princeton will cover all tuition costs for most families making under $100,000 a year after getting rid of student loans. From Eilert Sheffy. Some students might soon get to attend Princeton for free. On Thursday, the New Jersey Ivy League school announced that it would be expanding its financial aid program to offer free tuition, including room and board, for most families whose annual income is under $100,000 a year. Previously, the same benefit was offered to families making under $65,000. The new income limit will take effect for all undergrads starting in the fall of 2023. One of Princeton's defining values is our commitment to ensure that talented students from all backgrounds can not only afford a Princeton education, but can flourish on our campus and in the world beyond it, Princeton President Christopher L. Eisgruber said in a statement. These improvements to our aid packages, made possible by the sustained generosity of our alumni and friends, will enhance the experience of students during their time at Princeton and their choices and impact after they graduate. According to Princeton, about 1,500 students, or about 25% of the undergraduate student body, will benefit from this additional aid. Also beginning next year, the university will increase the allowance for personal and book expenses to $450 to $3,500, and financial aid packages to allow for more flexibility to cover those miscellaneous charges. So, I know this is probably going to generate outrage from people saying, oh, well, the poor people can go to the Ivy League for free and the rest of us have to go pay for it. But this is actually not something new. It looks like this is just an adjustment for inflation. Princeton has always done this. And when it comes to places like Harvard and the Ivy Leagues, when it comes to places like that, I mean, these places are basically just accreditations. Like, if you've got the grades to be put in and accepted to a place like Princeton, you're already set for life. You go in there and you basically have the Princeton name. They don't have to go work hard for that. I mean, look at David Hogg. You just go there and then people open doors for you, essentially. So, this is not as outrage generating as people try to make it out to be, but it is a very, very sharp focus on where our inflation is. From WKYC, Channel 3, Oberlin College begins payment of $36.59 million to Gibson's Bakery after Ohio Supreme Court refuses to hear the appeal. Yes, we talked about it last week that the Supreme Court in Ohio tossed this out. Well, the payments have started. From Dino De Natale of the Associated Press. Nearly 6 years after a shoplifting incident exploded into controversy, Oberlin College has announced that it's begun the payment of $36.59 million to Gibson's Bakery. The decision to pay comes just after a week after the Ohio Supreme Court declined to hear Oberlin's appeal of the $25 million judgment awarded to Gibson's, who would accuse the college of ruining their business by branding them as racists. We're disappointed by the court's decision. However, this does not diminish our respect for the law and integrity of our legal system, Oberlin College stated, with tears in their eyes in a news release on Thursday. This matter has been painful for everyone. We hope that the end of the litigation will begin the healing of our entire community. According to the college, the total amount paid to Gibson's represents the judgment plus attorney fees and accumulated interest. Therefore, no further payments are required. So they didn't just start paying, they wrote the check. And good. Once again, on a public place, when you've done the approval, because I don't know if Oberlin is like this, but every other place that I've gone to college, if you want to post something, you have to have university approval. That means they approved the signage that said Gibson's was racist to not go there, therefore causing the damage to Gibson's. I honestly think $25 billion was a bit excessive, but I do know how long and lasting these things can last. So, absolutely, and congratulations to them. And we are winding out on the final few minutes of this because I actually do have a previous engagement at 11 that I have to get to. So we're going to have to keep winding this down. I know that Banning had to take off, but we will take his article here and talk about this for a second. Amazon took all U.S. solar rooftops offline after a flurry of fires and electrical explosions. From Annie Palmer and Laura Kolodny. On the afternoon of April 14th, 2020, dozens of firefighters arrived at an Amazon warehouse in Fresno as thick plumes of smoke poured from the roof of the 880,000 square foot warehouse. Some 220 solar panels and other equipment at the facility, known as FAT1, were damaged by the 3-alarm fire, which was caused by an undetermined electrical event within the solar system mounted on the top of the roof. Leland Wilding, Fresno's fire investigator, wrote in an incident report. A little over a year later, about 60 firefighters were called to an even larger Amazon facility in Perryville, Maryland, to put out a 2-alarm blaze, local news outlets reported. In the intervening months, at least 4 other Amazon fulfillment centers caught fire or experienced electrical explosions due to failures with their solar energy generating systems, according to internal company documents viewed by CNBC. The documents, which have never been made public, indicate that between April 2020 and June 2021, Amazon experienced critical fire or arc flash events in at least 6 of its 47 North American sites, with solar installations affecting 12.7% of such facilities. Arc flashes are a kind of electrical explosion. We have been going at this for a little bit over 2 hours, and I can already feel the mush in the mouth. Let's see. The solar snafus underscore the challenge Amazon and many other large corporations face in their quest to shrink their environmental footprint and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Amazon's been among the most aggressive. In 2019, founder Bezos launched the Climate Pledge, promising the largest online retailer with zero emissions by 2040, embrace renewable energy, and move away from gas-guzzling delivery vans, including through $1 billion-plus investment in electric vehicle company Rivian. Look, I appreciate the fact that they're trying to do this. I know a lot of people come out and say that solar is hippie stuff and it's bad and they're just trying to go back out and choke the rest of us out. Look, they're doing this as private industry. It's not working well for them, unfortunately, but they're doing this as private industry. So I can appreciate them going out and doing this without trying to force it down the rest of us and trying to prove an example. But what it does unfortunately prove is that while we do have the technology to start going solar, we're not there yet to start doing it broad scale. We haven't quite figured out how to capture and transfer the energy, and with the fires there as well, if any of the chemicals in the panels got down and into the grass, that grass becomes fallow for years upon years after this all came out. So I appreciate the fact that they're going back out and trying. And more innovations will come down the road as we go. But we're not there yet. And hopefully maybe we will get there someday. And the last one we'll do comes to us from The Blaze. And then we will do the rest tomorrow. But from The Blaze, many companies dropping the vaccine mandate, the rationale had become weak. From Courtney Wheel. Many global companies have quietly ended the vaccine mandates they once imposed on their employees and future hires. According to a report from Axios, Goldman Sachs announced late last month that no employee except those working in New York City will be subject to vaccine mandates as a precondition of their continued or future employment. That policy went into effect earlier this week. And compared to other companies, Goldman Sachs is relatively late to the game. The international sports and footwear giant Adidas, based in Germany, dropped its vaccine mandates for all employees back in early February. Though no longer required, we strongly encourage all employees to be vaccinated against the pinko pox, an Adidas spokesperson stated in an email at the time. The email also noted that all U.S. employees still had to report their vaccination status to the company. Adidas followed in the footsteps of Starbucks and Intel, which had both already abandoned their vaccine mandates. Cisco and JP Morgan Chase had also changed their vaccine mandate policies this summer. Business and public health leaders have offered several reasons for the dramatic about-face on vaccine mandates. Well, it turns out that a lot of their competitors are going out there and offering jobs without the vaccine mandates, and they're losing out on a lot of their potential employees in an already stretched thin labor market that has people not wanting to go out to work. And because nobody's really talking about it except for the people who are making money off of it, Anthony Fauci, Joe Biden, etc., it's falling out of favor with the American people, which is good. I do encourage people to go, and if they want to get a vaccine for polio, mumps, rubella, etc., or even the pinko pox, to go and get it. But there shouldn't be a government mandate to do it. It should be something you want to do, not something you have to do if you want to be forced to eat. And I'll never stop somebody from... I know that there are other people, some of my friends on the right, who will outright go out and try to stop somebody from going and getting the vaccine. I don't believe in that. If this is the way that you think that it will keep you safe, then do it. I don't believe this is the way that it'll keep myself safe. So I'm not doing it. But if that's what you want to do, then do it. That's always been my stance. In addition, with my stance of people telling people that if you have no way to go get the vaccine, you call up your old buddy J. Edgar, and if you really want it that bad, I will take you there as long as you don't put any pressure on me to go and follow suit with you. But with that, that's how we go with that. And that's all that we have for news today. That's all we have time for. But the last thing that we always do on a Monday is we read one of the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition and discuss how it was used in the series and how it can be used in real life. We are closing in on the double digits. We'll be done with those very shortly here. We are on the 99th Rule of Acquisition. Trust is the biggest liability at all. This is from the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition DS9 reference book. And there are a couple ways to go with this. Now, of course, the Ferengi built their society, as you can see in numerous different Next Generation and Deep Space Nine episodes. They weren't as prominent in Voyager, but they were very prominent in Deep Space Nine and Next Generation. And you always saw a certain level of distrust for other species, but also Ferengi themselves being distrustful, because if you do go in and put trust in many of their situations, they wound up getting screwed over. As of right now, in human society, I put this as about half of the way that we should be looking at things. There should be a level of trust that you should carry inherently. But you also have to remember that the other person does have an agenda, whether that be to acquire the product that you are offering or service that you're offering, or to take you out of the marketplace or bring you out of things. There should be some level of inherent trust, but do always, especially if you're working with people that you don't know, do take care to make sure that your own interests are being covered as well, because there are the situations where the people are out there. I mean, people I've trusted have gone around to try to stab me in the back to try to get me to lose a job, to lose my livelihood, to lose my life in some cases. So I think trust is important. It's not the biggest liability of all. It can be a liability, it definitely can be. But it also is necessary for certain banking and service relationships. So we'll call the 99th Rule of Acquisition half applicable to us as humans in a capitalistic society. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is something that we should also pay attention to as well. And with that, we head out of here for the day. So let's get this changed up and go. Yeah, I'd love to stay a little bit longer here and finish up what we have, but I do have an appointment at 11, so I've got to get myself up, dressed, and out of here. Where's my outro music? There it is. Alright, so with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by, chatted in the live chat, hung out with us, and thank you, Harvey McLeod, for changing the title as well. We'll be back here, depending on how my appointment goes here. I'll probably be back here later on tonight, and we'll do some more Fallout 3. I know we're just doing a little bit of exploring right now in that game, so we got through the Raven Rock. We're checking out a couple, because, I mean, it's not like New Vegas where almost every location is associated with a quest of some sort or something else. There actually is some just random go out and explore kind of things out there. So we've been crossing a few of them off and going through and checking some of those out. So definitely looking through. Scavenging, come back and join us tonight if we can get to that. There will be an announcement on Twitter if I can't get to that. So if we can, it will be at 5:30 Central Time. Otherwise, be back here tomorrow morning for more news, more commentary, and more politics over here on Contemporary. Definitely looking forward to seeing you guys here for more of that as we go through the last few things that we have on the agenda for today and to see what happens in the next 24 hours of news. Definitely looking forward to that and seeing where we go and what happens as we get into the midterms and how much they keep us they try to keep us talking about Trump. But with that, we're out of here for the day. Thanks, everybody. We will see you here next time over on Contemporary. Stick around for the raid. Hopefully it's for the Daily Ignoramus book because he is traveling from BaseCon. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but with that, we're out of here. Until next time, have a great day, and thanks for checking us out over here on Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.